worldwide menstruate as part of a cycle of fertility that comes every month. Every 28 days, some women bleed for 2 days or a full week. They may get cramps or not. If they do, they could be mild or extremely painful. And unfortunately, many countries in Africa are deeming it a curse where girls cannot go to school or women remain employed. On today's Our Voices, we'll examine what women and girls need to succeed in life amid the challenges associated with this biological process and breaking the old ideologies of a curse. We will look at the burden females endure as they navigate their monthly cycles. What can families, friends, communities, and governments do to have a more open discussion on this subject? Hello, I'm Oriani Tangishaka, and this is Our Voices. Let's begin in Kenya, where a lawyer is working to keep teenage girls in school by supplying the menstrual health product that often their families cannot afford. Brenda Mulinya has our story.
Fanny Kwega and her team of volunteers make their way into an informal school in the heart of Kibera, one of East Africa's largest slums. They are bringing 3 months' worth of menstrual health supplies, a much-needed relief for these teenage girls outside Nairobi. School head Elizabeth Manyasa says the supplies help keep the girls in class.
They find it very difficult to get sanitary towels, and when they are experiencing menstruation period, most of them stay at home. So when we look at the deaths, we can easily tell that this child is out of school because of his menstrual cycle.
Getting menstrual hygiene products is a challenge for the girls in these informal settlements where many people earn the equivalent of $1 or $2 a day. Evelyn Odinga is a mother of 3. Her 15-year-old daughter has just started her menses.
She tells me that she wants money to buy pads. I am a hawker. Sometimes I have only earned 100 shillings. I need to buy vegetables and water. If I give her 50 shillings to buy towels, I feel like I am making a loss.
The care packages can mean the difference between a family having a meal and a girl retaining her dignity.
The reason we are doing this is because there is a dire need in the country.
Kwega says as many as 70% of Kenyan girls from disadvantaged communities lack regular access to menstrual health products despite public spending.
There's a program in government where all these kids need to have free sanitary towels every month, but they don't get.
Kwega's My Flow Foundation has helped more than 2,000 girls. Contributors to their Tony's non-profit group hope to give young women the confidence of having a year's worth of pads so as not to disrupt their education. The foundation also arranges mentorship programs for economically disadvantaged young women, support for teen mothers, and pro bono legal services for victims of gender-based violence. Brenda Mulinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
Now to South Sudan, where a group of men and boys are trying to break cultural taboos on a topic that often drives young girls out of school: menstruation. Men for Women distributes menstrual pads to girls while also encouraging boys and men to engage in conversations and advocate for policies that make sanitary hygiene products accessible to girls. Sheila Pony reports from Juba.
Sunday, Josephine grew up in a poor family of 12 in South Sudan's capital, Juba. When she reached puberty, her family couldn't afford sanitary pads.
Whenever my period came, I would use pieces of cloth or sometimes toilet paper to help.
At school, Sunday was teased and the shame was too much. She dropped out, became pregnant and never went back. Today, Sunday cleans offices to provide her child. South Sudan's all-male activist group, Men for Women, wants to prevent the same fate for other girls.
Boys are the ones that do a lot of period stigma to girls. When they see stains on the girl, they laugh at the girl. why we are involving them is that we are trying to tell them that, look, this is a natural thing.
Men for Women works to remove that stigma by teaching menstrual health and hygiene in schools. At the Happy Angel Primary School, the group handed out sanitary pads and demonstrated how to use them.
At first, I'm fearing because there were questions and I don't know even how to answer them. But at the end, at the last, I feel good and I'm very grateful.
Men for Women is helping girls who don't have sanitary pads avoid being isolated and cut off from the community.
Oh, I'm actually impressed because it's the first time, I think, in the country for men to talk about menstruation.
They are also educating South Sudanese boys.
Today I feel so proud because it is good to teach most of the boys so that to encourage the girls. And I'm so happy.
Akumu says it is time to break the silence on menstruation, and Men for Women is a good step forward. Sheila Poni for VOA News, Juba.
We now move to Spain, where the president's cabinet recently approved a bill that grants paid medical leave for women who suffer from severe period pain. Spain becomes the first European country to advance such legislation. As a France 24 report noted on May 17, 2022, menstrual leave is currently offered only in a small number of countries across the globe. Among them are South Korea and Indonesia. France 24 also note that the proposed legislation must still be approved by the Spain parliament, with a vote not expected for months. And that is not clear whether the Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's minority coalition government, which has made women's rights a priority, has enough support in the assembly to pass it. It's time for a break, but first, do you think it's reasonable for women and girls to have leave of absence from work due to period pain? Tell us your take on this on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is at VOA Our Voices. We are also on WhatsApp, and our number is right there on the bottom of your screen. When we return, my co-host Ndimiake Amina Semenyesh and I talk with Candace Chigra, also known as the Minister of Menstruation. We'll be right back.
On VOA Our Voices, women are using their voices to empower,
To nurture, to educate,
to stand up in any language.
amajwi yacu,
dimsachen, muryoyinmu,
Mazwi edu,
our voices.
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. Here are some myths and facts put together by the United Nations Children's Funds. Number 1. During periods, girls are impure. Girls on their periods should not visit sacred places or cook. Fact. There is nothing impure about periods. Bleeding is a natural process that does not in any way affect the places a girl or woman visits or the things she touches. Myth number 2. Girls should sleep in a separate shed or different room when having their periods. Fact. Menstruation causes no harm and it isn't contagious to anyone else in the same room. Myth number 3. Physical activities of any form can disturb the menstrual flow. Fact. Playing sport or exercising can actually help relieve menstrual pain. Myth number 4. Food like curd, tamarind, and pickles disturb the menstrual flow. Fact. The food you eat does not decide the flow of your periods. There is nothing you can't eat on your periods. Myth number 5. Girls having their periods should not touch or go near plants. The plants would die if they do so. Fact. Plants thrive on good care, like all of us, irrespective of whom it comes from. Myth number 6. When purchasing sanitary products should be kept private and covered in paper. Fact. It is completely natural to get your periods. Buying sanitary product is like buying soap or toothpaste. They are all personal hygiene products. Today we're looking at ways women and girls can be supported amid the challenges associated with monthly menstrual cycles. My co-host and I spoke with Candace Chigwa, also known as the Minister of Menstruation. She is a strong advocate for demystifying menstruation taboos through education.
So when I often teach people to say, in order to remove period stigma, what is it that you have to do? It's really through just conversations. It's really through talking openly about periods, because often periods are seen in such a negative light that people don't really understand the necessity for it. They don't understand the facts behind it, the menstrual health reproductive system, and what actually entails month to month. Because at the end of the day, it is a natural biological function, same to sneezing, same to us going to the bathroom, right? And it's simply just asking a question at the dinner table with your friends to say, why is it that periods are seen so negatively in society? And then seeing the different viewpoints that come through and challenging those type of viewpoints, and not see it as a disgusting thing as society has made it for a very, very long time.
The society in general doesn't see menstrual products as basic necessities for women and girls. And also in relation to that, I think there is also an issue of heavy tax. For example, in South Africa, the country removed the 15% value-added tax on sanitary products. But in countries like Ghana and Ethiopia, there is a lot of advocacy going on to press the government to remove this additional tax, but it's not going anywhere. So how can we demand that in an effective way?
It's such an important question you ask, because what we tend to forget is that half the population, or more than half the population, menstruates. So that means that the other half of the population doesn't require these necessities. And the first thing we need to realize is the language that we use around period products. So often people will call period products feminine hygiene products, which implies that it is a woman's issue, or it implies that something needs to be clean, i.e. the vagina needs to be clean, when in fact the vagina is a self-cleansing machine. So those two terms in itself states that, periods are a woman's only issue and periods are dirty, when in fact that isn't the case. Menstruation does also impact not only women and girls, but people who menstruate that don't identify as women and girls, who are trans and intersex. So what we tend to forget is that these items are essential items that are needed to manage period blood, same to when we need toilet paper. And when we go into public restrooms, we see that toilet paper is there for free. A lot of activists are saying that if we can allow for period products to be easily accessible, or give period products to communities that cannot afford it, then people won't be held back by this natural thing. People will be able to go to school, people will be able to go to work. And it just starts by recognizing the fact that periods are a human experience. And how we do that is we have these conversations, but it also speaks to who we see in government who are representing us. And if we don't have menstruators who are representing us, then it's going to be very difficult to ensure that period positivity and menstrual health policies are put in place.
Yeah, Ms. Candice, I really like what you said about when you go to the restrooms and you don't see a toilet paper, you really get shocked. So why don't we see menstrual cycle products? That's really key. So through your NGO, you teach that menstrual education is key, but is more than just that. Could you elaborate on what other teachings are critical when we talk about menstruation and periods in general?
I look back at my personal experience when I first came across sexual education, and just how awkward it was, and also just how much fear was placed in the education of telling young girls in particular that if they conduct themselves in sexual activity, bad things, bad consequences will come out of place, and not really having affirming and empowering conversations about, these are things you should look out for. This is what sex actually is. This is what the reproductive system is. And I think with the nonprofit Curate, we look at really empowering and affirming young people through just engaging and interactive workshops. So obviously we speak to menstruation because menstruation being such a taboo topic in South Africa and the world means that a lot of young girls will hit their adolescent stage feeling very shy and embarrassed, and this shouldn't be the case. So what we do is we spend an hour with these participants saying, let's have fun, but let's also engage in learning something that is so critical, because menstruation is inevitable. Puberty is inevitable. It's a part of growing up. And so when I started menstruating and I felt like I was going to die, what these workshops would have done for me, and it would have removed 11 years of awkwardness and shame for me in terms of just how I related with my body. And that's what we're doing with Curate. We are interacting, we're engaging, and we're educating young people on the ground.
What role would you say parents in a household would play, and what would you advise them to do to prepare? You know, like you're saying, when you first encountered it, and so many, they just get to the bathroom and they see something red, and sometimes they don't even know what's happening. So what is the role of households and parents?
Parents play such an important role in how their children will view themselves for the next 10, 11 years. Because what happens is that if a young girl who starts a period at the age of 8, because research shows that young girls can start at early ages of 8, and then has a period that is very negative towards periods, that is a long time for a young girl to feel ashamed and terrified over their own body until they probably come across the information when they are much older, maybe in their young adult years from 20 onwards. So that's a long time, right? And I think what parents need to realize is that they need to remove their own form of negative bias towards periods, in particular period products. I recall coming across a story where a mother forbade her teenage daughter from using a tampon until she turned 18 because the mother believed that a tampon would break her virginity or break her hymen. But a tampon does not mean that a menstruator is having sex with the product. In fact, a tampon is just there to collect and absorb blood. So, policing young menstruators' bodies in what they can not use is a way to drive further stigma and further shame. You're excluding them from giving them the opportunity to choose which period products they wanted to use, because that teenage daughter expressed to her community to say, I enjoy swimming, but how can I swim with my period pad? How can I swim with my menstrual pad? I can't. I need to use a tampon, or I need to use a menstrual cup. And my mom she forbade me from using it. And forbidden is such a strong word. That's a heavy burden for a young menstruator to carry. So it's really important that parents understand that they are creating a safe space for their young children to grow in a way that will shape their lives in a very empowering way. And if they choose not to open those safe spaces, it can really be debilitating. It can make a child feel that they're not confident. It can make them feel out of sync with their own body. And that's just really scary, because when we think of puberty, I often think of just how scary puberty was for me. I mean, I was growing hips. All of a sudden, I'm seeing things develop out of place, and I'm thinking, what is going on? To then only realize that menstruation is the last stage of puberty. And so parents need to be cognizant. They need to be aware and see their children. You can see that their child is developing in certain areas when they're growing a certain age. And then you can start to recognize that you should have these conversations, and not just a conversation, but conversations. So parents really just need to equip themselves with that information, learn from menstrual activists, listen to podcasts, read, watch child-friendly content that exists on platforms such as YouTube, and then establish that environment for your children.
In Ethiopia, Ferwene Mebratu was named the 2019 CNN Hero of the Year. She produced and patented reusable menstrual pad for girls in her native Ethiopia, where menstruation is a taboo. The current civil war has impacted the work of many non-governmental organizations and charities. VOA Salim Salomon has this story of Ferwene's efforts in Tigray prior to the war.
Ferwene Mebratu remembers when she returned to her home village in northern Ethiopia and saw women squatting over holes in the ground. Without any sanitary pads to use during their menstrual periods, they were stuck in this undignified position.
How is that possible? And they were telling me that they don't even use underwear. And that was the most turning point for me. I kind of felt, the nerves going from head to my toes. And that's when I said, I've got to do something. Why is this thing bothering me over and over again? So that was it.
The more she examined the problem, the bigger it appeared. 2 out of every 5 girls have been forced to miss school during their periods, with many eventually dropping out. Grown women were resorting to using old cloth or grass as pads. Women and girls, she found, were being shamed by their community during their menstrual periods.
We're talking about always gender equality and all that stuff, but when the basic necessity of a young girl is not fulfilled, how is that possible? How is that possible? How is the country even going to be developed when 50% of your society, women, are compromised this way? It is crazy.
In 2009, Feroini founded Mariam Saba Products Factory in Ethiopia's northern city of Mekelle. The factory produces reusable pads that can last up to 18 months and cost 90% less than disposable pads. Feroini has teamed up with a charitable organization, Dignity Period, and together they have distributed more than 150,000 free menstrual hygiene kits produced by the factory. The work is having an impact. Dignity Period has recorded a 24% increase in attendance by girls in schools where they offer services. Feroini was selected as the CNN Hero of the Year and will receive $100,000 to support her work. She said the award was an affirmation of a decision she made years ago to move, along with her 3-year-old daughter, from the U.S. back to Ethiopia to pursue this cause.
It was the moment of an amazing journey, and people thought that I was crying because of the whole event. But it's the whole timing issue was just, it must have been God's willing to happen the way it happened.
But she says her work is not done. She noted that there are 30 million women of reproductive age in Ethiopia, and the vast majority do not have access to affordable sanitary pads. Additionally, there is a 15% value-added tax on many menstrual hygiene products.
It's not just Ethiopia, it's everywhere, developing countries. Even in the US, there is a tax issue. So we seriously, now that CNN has made it an issue that for anybody to look at this seriously, and we hope that everyone will make a sensible solution and a sensible change in making this a reality for all.
Salam Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for another break. When we return in our Women to Watch segment, we'll introduce you to amazing women creating biodegradable pads for women and girls from agricultural waste. We'll be right back.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology.
City, rural, educated or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Welcome back, you're watching Our Voices. As many of you are aware, most sanitary pads available for women and girls in Africa are relatively expensive and are classified as single-use plastics, which means some take hundreds of years to decompose. To help tackle this environmental problem, a women-led Kenyan enterprise has created a low-cost biodegradable pad made from agricultural waste. Juma Mainga reports from Thika, Kenya.
From a distance, you might think that Mary Nyarwai is simply disposing of agricultural waste at her home in Thika, on the outskirts of Nairobi. But what she is actually doing is making biodegradable sanitary pads. After facing difficulties finding safe quality pads herself, Nyarwai thought of a solution using readily available raw materials.
Maize is a staple in Africa, and this is waste. So I normally go and collect it from the market, and this is also waste. These leaves, pineapple leaves are waste, so I also collect them from the farms. So when you combine that two, you make a very beautiful pad that is soft and also absorbs. It delivers on comfort and also absorption, and it's also sustainable.
Once collected, these agricultural wastes undergo rigorous processes to break down the natural fibers and mold the raw materials into biodegradable sanitary pads. Nyarwai's company is called Nyungu Africa, loosely translated to Womb of Africa. Her pads are getting good reviews.
The difference was quite significant. It felt like I was sitting on clouds because the material is very different. Her pads are very soft. The absorbency is good. It becomes really quite a lifesaver for yourself.
In 2019, there was a widespread outcry on Kenyan social media questioning the quality of some pads on the market. Kenya's health ministry says it is attempting to maintain quality standards for the sanitary pads produced and sold in Kenya to protect consumers as well as the environment.
The strategy was broadly looking at sanitation being a person-friendly issue. Now, the bigger thing or the new thing in that strategy is that we were looking at empowering the individuals to be able to act.
Nyarwai hopes her innovation can help Kenyan women not only with their health, but also with their financial well-being.
Period poverty is a global crisis, but because Africa has a very large population of women who are marginalized and underserved, this is where period poverty really eats our women. This is it's a makeshift small industry. So it is possible to be replicated in very many areas, just to train the women how to, pick the right raw materials and to process them and then to make the pads.
And best of all, the pads are not made of plastic, which means they do no harm to the environment. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Thika, Kenya.
Do you know a woman who's breaking the stigma and taboo surrounding menstruation? Let us know on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On WhatsApp, send us a message. Don't forget to use our hashtag VOA Our Voices. And that's our show for this week. Special thanks to Candice Chigra, the Minister of Menstruation, for being with us today. If you would like to catch up on the latest episode of Our Voices, go to voaafrica.com. On behalf of my co-host and Voice of America, I am Oriani Tangishaka. Thanks for watching. Good day.